Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Retzlaff with the Connected Commerce Council, and I would like to welcome you to our Tech Forward webcast, How Technology is Fueling the Mississippi Recovery and Growing the Mississippi Economy. We have got a really great lineup of panelists who will be joining us for today's webcast today. But before we begin, I'd just like to say welcome and thank you to our partners who helped us put together this event today. Giving a big shout out to the Mississippi Tourism Association, the Alliance in Corinth, Mississippi, the Jackson County Economic Development Foundation, the Mississippi Development Authority, and Shamrock. I'd also like to make a shameless plug about our organization, 3C. We are a nonprofit membership organization made up of thousands of small businesses, large and small, that are both powered and empowered by digital tools and technology to help them run and grow their business. At 3C, we work together with our members to ensure businesses maintain affordable access to digital tools and online services that help them grow more efficiently, boost their profitability, and ultimately find more success. As we're all aware, the COVID-19 pandemic forever changed American small businesses. Many closed, jobs were lost, and far too many communities were badly hurt by the pandemic that caused massive upheaval. In a way, the pandemic made a lot of small businesses rethink their approach to digital tools and in a way motivated them to look at the new ways to retain their current customers and explore other options on how they can grow their business. Through the research we've conducted here at 3C, looking at how the pandemic impacted small businesses and the role digital tools played, we found that 93% of small businesses in Mississippi leaned heavily on digital tools during the pandemic, which is significantly higher than the national average, which was at 72% of small businesses. Additionally, a majority of small businesses in Mississippi said that they plan to use digital tools more coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which just shows the optimism and drive entrepreneurs have in the great state of Mississippi. That's one of the reasons why at 3C, we believe access to affordable and secure digital tools is really critical now more than ever, as small businesses are the key to driving the American economy towards recovery, with the support of course, with their communities and the platforms that are provided by the larger companies to help empower them through the growth and recovery. For more information, I encourage you to check out our website, connectedcouncil.org, where you can learn a little bit more about the digital safety net that saved millions of businesses during the pandemic and how that digital safety net is helping small businesses build back a faster recovery. Now that that's out of the way, we can go ahead and roll into the fun stuff, get into our programming. For today's webcast, we're going to hear from some great panelists on how technology is fueling Mississippi's recovery in the wake of the pandemic. But before we begin with those discussions, I'd like to first welcome our keynote speaker, Mississippi State Senator and Chairman of the Senate Technology Committee, Senator Scott DeLano. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob, for having me on this webinar to discuss what Mississippi is doing to foster technology, digital innovation, and a technological workplace. As the chairman of Mississippi Senate Technology Committee, I'm here to tell you that Mississippi is open for business. Since the height of the pandemic, Mississippi has recovered nearly 90% of the jobs lost. Our Governor Tate Reeves just posted that Mississippi put in the top 10 in America for job recovery at about 90, we're close to about 90%. That puts us on a list where we're competing with Texas, Georgia, and Alabama, but we're rated higher than Arkansas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. And Rob, as you know, when we talk about jobs, goods and services, and particularly technology, the reality is that we're really competing against China and other countries around the world in an international marketplace. I'm sure you've heard this all across the country, but my constituents in South Mississippi and many small businesses across the state have told me countless ways that they've had to learn or relearn the way to stay in business during the pandemic. Most of the ways had to do with technology or implementing digital tools to survive in this new virtual workplace. I can share with you a story of a large fresh produce supplier in South Mississippi who had a long tradition of providing its restaurants and casino customers with salespeople who would visit each account personally to ensure that they're meeting or exceeding their customers' expectations. Of course, COVID restrictions changed everything for this company, and they had to quickly adapt to using cell phones and FaceTime to service their accounts remotely. And within 2 months, this company completely modernized their entire business model without compromising their drive to exceed their customers' expectations. Today, they are more successful than ever. And with using these new technologies, they have significantly expanded their potential customer base. This is just one example that I've heard loud and clear from Main Street that technology speaks. In other words, technology and digital tools are not only helping businesses stay open during the pandemic, but now they're able to take these businesses to another whole level. I was interested to see in your 3C study that found 93% of small businesses report that they intend to maintain or increase their usage of digital tools post-COVID. I'm hearing the same message, and there's no doubt that the pandemic rapidly increased our need for usage of digital tools, and I certainly don't see that going backwards. I like the study's recommendations to policymakers, which included the need to access capital and infrastructure, as well as access to training for our future workplace. On that note, let me tell you about a few things that we're proud that we've been able to accomplish recently here in the Mississippi legislature. We are expanding broadband throughout our entire state. We're putting real dollars behind digital infrastructure that we need for our schools, businesses, hospitals, and our families. And when we say expand, we're talking about deployment and build out of fiber optic networks to close the digital divide that has plagued rural states like Mississippi for years. We have provided strong incentives to our rural electric power co-ops across our state to focus on broadband access to unserved areas of our state. And I'm happy to report that as of November of this year, the state has provided $256 million for these efforts. This has resulted in a leverage from our electric co-ops to more than $416 million of total investment, with over 100,000 households in rural Mississippi gaining access to gigabit service. But Rob, the number that is most staggering to me is that these co-ops have deployed over 14,600 miles of fiber optic cable across rural Mississippi. And we're not done. When we meet back in January, the legislature plans to use ARPA funds to continue our investment in broadband across our state. This time, I expect we will continue our investments by including other traditional internet service providers in our quest to close that digital divide. And I would be remiss if I did not mention a bill that we passed this past year that was signed by the governor that requires all public schools in the state of Mississippi to provide computer science classes, no matter where that student is. We want every student in the state of Mississippi, no matter what of their economical or social background is, to have access to strong computer science curriculum in our state. And I'm really glad that we're able to see that here in our public schools. I think that everyone sees the value of investing in our state's digital infrastructure and what we can do for tomorrow, but we're excited to see companies that are already choosing to move to Mississippi. We've had some monumental announcements over the last couple of months. We've had Amazon that's coming into Madison County, and Google has set up an operations center in DeSoto County. And we hear frequently of our homegrown technology companies, drone companies, artificial intelligence, and applications with agricultural, healthcare, schools, and the list goes on and on. Today, you're going to hear from Sheffy Robinson, who started her own technology company here in Mississippi. This is a great story. And we also have federal partners across our state. And here in my backyard, we have Stennis Space Center and Keesler Air Force Base and a CB base as well. And these defense contractors, both large and small, are helping make way for our next level of growth with technology in our state. Our universities and community colleges are working together more and more with the same goal in mind, to produce a workforce for tomorrow. We're fortunate that we have strong angel investment groups in the state of Mississippi that is helping tech startups go public. These are all really great things, but where do we go from here? As the chairman of Mississippi State Senate Technology Committee, we need to do everything that we can to work together to prepare our workforce and to see that Mississippi's workforce is digitally advanced. Your next two panelists include leaders in Mississippi economic development, small business administration, and technology development. I know they can give you even more specifics on the pandemic recovery and the future for the state of Mississippi. It's going to be a great future for the state. I'm glad to participate in it, and I'm glad to see that you are here helping us in these efforts. Again, I thank you so much for having me on, and thank you very much for highlighting our advancements in technology and workforce development.
Thank you so much, Senator. Really, really appreciate that. And thank you for mentioning our research. Do you have time for a quick question before we let you go and transition into our first panel?
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect. So you mentioned, through that research, we're seeing this gap, if you will, of businesses that really took on digital and transformed their business to adapt and pivot to the pandemic. And fortunately, some of these businesses were able to do so, and unfortunately, many businesses weren't able to do so because they didn't have that sound digital infrastructure in place. From our research and working with our members over the last nearly 2 years, we've seen this forcing mechanism that is the digital transformation that people have been talking about, it feels like, for the last decade or so. And what we're trying to do is encourage other businesses that might be a little bit more uncertain or less advanced when it comes to digital tool use and digital skills. And through the research that we've done both here in the US and across Europe, we consistently found that education is the single greatest barrier to digital tool adoption. And in order to lower that barrier, we want to help connect small businesses with the right learning materials to help them build the knowledge and skills to use digital tools to help them find success. So I guess my question is, what advice do you have for a small business that really hasn't gone all in digital? What can you say to them?
Well, Rob, I get excited when I hear you talk about that, because almost every single thing that you've pointed out, I can point to bullet points, or I can make points where we have made a concerted effort to try to address those in Mississippi. But, for businesses, I'm a small business owner myself, and I do work with a lot of other companies that are in the same situation, and they do need the tools that are necessary. And I will tell you, talk about education. Here in Mississippi, we've made an effort to make sure that every single school-age child has a device that they're able to take home, and they're able to continue their schoolwork, not just with remote learning, with what we used and what we had to do during COVID, but now we're using those tools and those digital tools to integrate into our entire the way that we teach curriculum in education. And that also, having those devices in many of the households are giving parents that would not otherwise have the opportunity a device that they're able to use as well. And what I'm really glad to see is some of the larger technology companies that are providing training for our students. They're also allowing their suites to be opened up for adults. And that's where parents can go in and they can learn how Excel and spreadsheets work. That's really dynamic. And I think that even those quote unquote elementary tools that our kids are learning by are the very same tools that my parents are going to, and people of an older generation who have not been exposed to this digital platform and is going to use to be successful in the future. So I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to be more digital savvy and for us to grow those opportunities in all of our business in the state of Mississippi.
That's perfect. Well said, Senator. Thank you so much for that great keynote. And thank you for taking the time to answer that question. Really appreciate you joining us today. And thank you for your continued support of small businesses and entrepreneurs in Mississippi.
Thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and bring on the first panel for a conversation on small business and digital commerce in Mississippi. Want to say welcome to Janita Stewart, the Deputy Director from the Small Business Administration, Danielle Morgan, the Executive Director at the Mississippi Tourism Association, and Clayton Stanley, the President at the Alliance in Corinth and Alcorn County. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you here for our first panel today. I'm sure some of our audience members might already be familiar with your organizations, but why don't we go ahead and go around the room real quick and have Janita start us off and tell us a little bit about your role with the SBA and what the last 18, 20 months have been like, as I'm sure it's been incredibly hectic for you and the SBA.
Thank you, Rod. I appreciate the remarks from Senator DeLano as well. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but for folks who aren't aware, the U.S. Small Business Administration, better known as SBA, is a very small independent federal government agency. And really our mission is to help people start a business, grow, expand, and recover. I'll comment on the recovery part of that in just a moment. And just so sort of geographically, the lay of the land, there's at least one SBA district office in each state in U.S. territory. We got some states that are multi-districts, because they're larger states geographically, or they have, a large number of small businesses located there. Now, Mississippi is serviced by the SBA district office, physically located in Jackson, and we have a branch office in Gulfport. So in order to help small businesses start, grow, and expand, SBA offers a wide array of programs and services, including our financial assistance programs on one side of the house. We have non-financial assistance programs on the other side of the house. And just as an example, our entrepreneurial development programs that are primarily provided by organizations that we fund, including the Network of Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, America's Counselors, that's our volunteer group, our Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and our Women's Business Centers. All of them help, with management and technical assistance provided to small businesses. Now, in Mississippi, we have each of these entities, here in our state. So our state is well serviced, and just about every corner of the state has relatively easy access to this assistance. So, the state is also well covered. And by the way, the assistance they provide is free and confidential because it's paid for by taxpayers like you and me and you. In addition to that, we offer small business loan programs, and really that's how SBA got started, decades ago. We offer these loan programs go up to $5 million. We partner with thousands of in and out of state bank and non-bank lending institutions, SBA certified development companies, and approved micro loan intermediaries in order for us to make, loans to eligible credit-worthy startup and existing small businesses and entrepreneurs. On top of that, we have federal government certifications and contracting programs. The senator mentioned, Keesler Air Force Base, the CB Base, and VA, and others. They're amongst those where we offer certifications and contracting programs that are geared towards small businesses, small disadvantaged businesses, women-owned, service disabled, veteran-owned, and HubZone certified firms, which, by the way, helps to shore up the approximately $400 to $500 billion in annual federal government contracting spending that's done. Now, for the recovery piece I mentioned a moment ago, that part of the SBA's mission, that entails disaster recovery. And I realize that all of us know all too well, the COVID-19 disaster that started March of 2020 and continuing. And with that, SBA has been the federal government agency that has, been front and center providing COVID relief programs, including EIDL, you heard of that, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, PPP, EIDL Advance. We now have what's called targeted EIDL and supplemental targeted EIDL advances, which are grants tied to the EIDL loan program. Restaurant Revitalization Fund, that's come and gone. That industry was hard hit. The shuttered venue operators grant, that was another industry hard hit. We now have Community Navigators program pilot that's going on now. So SBA's COVID relief programs for small businesses and nonprofits really have served to contribute over $1 trillion to the national economy. And so, besides this particular, relief in terms of COVID, at any given time, SBA is supporting ongoing disaster declarations, whether it be flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, whatever. And SBA has, various other programs, and these programs really are administered by headquarters Washington, D.C., including the SBIR, STTR program, Small Business Innovation Research, and Small Business Technology, transfer programs. Again, they're administered out of Washington, D.C., and I'll get into that just a little later. And did you want me to share a couple of lessons learned at this point?
Let's get into the other panelists, and then we'll go into lessons learned, if that's okay, Janita.
All right.
Thank you so much for that. Danielle Morgan, welcome. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Rob. Thanks for having us today. We're excited to be here. I personally am a huge advocate for technology in Mississippi, so thank you so much for having us. Mississippi Tourism Association is for over 30 years, we've been the voice for the tourism industry in Mississippi, fulfilling our mission of advocacy, education, and promotion, and uniting all sectors of the tourism industry in the state through those efforts. So we're thrilled to be here and look forward to talking more about our experience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Danielle. Last but not least, Clayton Stanley from the Alliance. Clayton, how have the last 18 to 20 months been like for you and the businesses in Corinth and Alcorn County? Oh,
On mute. Sorry about that, Rob. I was on mute, but thanks for having me, first of all. The last 18 months have been a whirlwind, but it's been a pretty good 18 months for us, all in all, from an economic development perspective and a chamber perspective. As you mentioned, I run the Alliance, which is Corinth and Alcorn County's Chamber of Commerce and Industrial Development organization. It's a real privilege to have that opportunity. But like everybody, our lives changed when the pandemic broke out, and it became an opportunity for chambers of commerce to rise to the occasion and shine for our membership. It was life or death for many of our businesses, and it was a responsibility like we had never faced in small town chamber history. And I'm proud to get into how we did it, and we didn't do everything right, and we compared notes with many of our peers around the state and around the country, but technology was the piece that allowed us to, one, communicate, and then two, try the new techniques that allowed businesses to stay open, to increase margins, to operate with less personnel, and a host of other things that I look forward to talking with you about.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Clayton. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We have a panel of experts here that are going to speak to kind of where we are now, where we go from here in a post-pandemic world, if and when we ever get out of it. I just like to go around the room. Janita, you talked a little bit about lessons learned throughout the course of the pandemic. I'd like for you to speak about that and share a little bit more about what, these programs are, and, for small businesses in Mississippi that might not know exist and are free. You mentioned SBDC and all the great programs that are for small businesses, and they're free. And we talked to so many of our members throughout the last 2 years about all the great initiatives and programs, and yet so many businesses don't know about it. So talk to us a little bit about that and what other programs are out there.
Yes, so the Small Business Development Center Network, that is a wonderful organization here in our state, and they're spread throughout the whole country. And actually, we fund them. We provide major funding to that particular network. It's a college and university-based system. The state office of the SBDC is at Ole Miss. And so there are, I think, either 8 or 9 sub-centers that are located at various colleges and universities throughout the state. We also have business assistance centers that are tied to the SBDC network. So, and, they do things like, helping people, put together business plans. They can do market research. They can help someone who is just getting started to get them set up correctly with, for example, through the Secretary of State's office and those, that type of assistance. We have other similar organizations. I mentioned SCORE, which is a volunteer organization. They don't get paid for what they do, but they just have what I call a call to duty to do provide similar services to small businesses and entrepreneurs, similar to the SBDC. Others, the Veterans Business Outreach Center, or VBOC, physically at Mississippi State University, they provide assistance to veterans and families of veterans. And so if you're a veteran out there and you need assistance, I would suggest that you contact the VBOC at Mississippi State University. We also have 2 really brand new women's business centers in the state. Both of them are housed at HBCUs. One's at Jackson State University, and the other one is at Alcorn State University. They're sort of onboarding now, and they provide us, similar services, but really targeting women. Now, if men, approach the centers and need assistance, management and technical assistance, hey, They will not discriminate. They will assist, a man that's trying to start a business or trying to get to the next level. So that's sort of a nutshell in terms of the organizations that we fund that provide that critical assistance, again, that's paid for by taxpayers. And I wanted to just mention a couple of the lessons that we learned throughout the past 20 months or so is, there was and remains a lot of businesses adversely affected by the pandemic. Some have rebound, which is wonderful. Some are to a degree, shifting the way that they do business, changing their business model to some extent. And some are in the process of coming back this way. And, regretfully, some are gone and most likely won't come back. We find that small businesses are rethinking their disaster preparedness planning, in light of what they've gone through with respect to the pandemic. And we think that, COVID is, the effects of it is going to be long term. And I guess just as in terms of SBA staffing, we've learned to work remotely effectively. That was not easy earlier on. That was a challenge, but we sort of got it down to a science right now. And the last lesson learned I'll mention has to do with, SBA, is a small independent federal government agency, and then perhaps it was not as well known before, but SBA is most definitely very well known now. So just wanted to just put that in there as well.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Janita. Danielle, talk to us a little bit about how the tourism industry has been in the Magnolia State. Talk a little bit about how the economic recovery is going and what small businesses are starting to do right now as we go through this period of time where we're recovering from the pandemic.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Well, as the senator mentioned, Mississippi's leadership was very intentional about trying to keep business open and alive, and that really helped out in the tourism arena as well. I think there's a few things that stand out to me on how we've continued to be successful, and we have fared a lot better than expected as a state. Actually, in September, we were number one in travel spending in the United States, 24% above 2019. So we think we've definitely had some successes. One thing is our tourism leaders across the state began to communicate often, sometimes daily. As Clayton mentioned, everything was life and death, really. And as tourism offices in these communities, they know that those small businesses and mom and pop restaurants and hotels, they were depending on them to continue to drive visitation, to keep their doors open. So it really was life or death, and something that everyone took really personally. So they channeled that collective ambition into ways to stay alive. And I think that was everything from hotels transitioning to mobile check-ins, of course, restaurants and all of the takeout and providing those services that people really needed in those communities, and just finding different ways to make that happen. So that was really incredible. Of course, also our state leadership, we came to them with a plan on how to keep tourism humming, and they invested in that. And it really has paid off because most states just completely stopped marketing to visitors, where we marketed Visit Mississippi Responsibly, that you still can visit. We have wonderful outdoor spaces and resources. So all of those things came together, and we really are proud of what we were able to accomplish as an industry through those efforts. So full steam ahead.
Fantastic. I have talked about this a number of times, I feel like, but one of the things that wasn't really well known before the pandemic that so many businesses in the tourism and hospitality space have started using and will probably continue to use are QR codes. And these QR codes have been around for years, and some businesses used them, others had no idea what they were. And now you see them everywhere. And now they are even popping up on TV and during commercials for you to scan and go to the website and find out more information about a company or an advertisement. And right. I think for the future, in terms of businesses, restaurants, I think will continue to use it just because it's so easy for them to use. Hotels are going to continue to use them. And I feel like that's definitely something that will not go away anytime soon as we enter the new normal.
I have Clayton, to say, Rob, I would have lost that bet on QR codes making a comeback. We're glad they did.
Who would have thought? Clayton, I want to go to you real quick. As the president of the Alliance, how are business leaders like yourself working to promote an up and coming and innovative environment that draws not only visitors, but attracts new business into your region and throughout the state of Mississippi?
Well, it's multifaceted, but I'll tell you. So our community had made the decision to go all in on fiber to the home, as Senator DeLano mentioned earlier, and we were an early adopter of that, and had a plan that we were going to execute on to recruit what I will call tech jobs, and then it's a wide definition. It is, and we're implementing a plan that we continue to implement that involves workforce training beginning at the K-12 level. It involves having quality of life that attracts people that want to come to work for those types of businesses that, think Austin, Texas, think Silicon Valley, think Nashville, Tennessee. What the pandemic did for that and what our application of digital technologies did through the last 18 months is accelerated our ability to be able to successfully execute that plan. I'll talk about just a little bit about lessons learned. I'll come back to your question. Probably the most important thing that happened in our community during the pandemic was we were in spring break when the world came to an end in our school system. And Corinth's been an innovator in our school district for many years, and we have a funky school schedule that carries us 12 months a year. And so we had a 2-week spring break, and we had a week's head start to prepare, but our kids never missed a single day of school. And we went back with real virtual school on day one, and that was thanks to many people in the technology industry who've been catering to school districts that we as parents didn't know anything about that was going on in the school. And then an email goes out to parents that says, hey, come pick your kid's tablet or computer up. They're going to be in school tomorrow and it's going to look different. And that did so much for our economy by giving parents some sense of normalcy. The kids are able to go to school in some capacity, and it allowed the business community we were limping along, but we were still moving forward. And I can't tell you what an impact that had. And then later, Corinth was the first community in the country to go back to school in person, and that helped even further. But, back to your question, the way we do this is we take the kickstart that we have seen through the pandemic that I think has given communities throughout rural America, particularly in Mississippi, a leg up, and that there are people who will never have to go back into a high-rise office building again if they don't want to. There are people who like fresh air and open spaces and what I consider a better quality of life that we can find in Mississippi that can do that from here. And we've got the tools in place through the basics. Fiber is now taken for, you must take it for granted. It's got to happen. And that's happening in Mississippi. And then we're layering on the technology training, coding academies that, I've been saying for a couple of years, and I don't know how to code, probably too old to learn to code. But I think that it's important that our kids, when they have a foreign language requirement in their school curriculum, coding rates way up there, in my opinion, higher than any other foreign language that's been taught traditionally in school system. And we're going to capitalize on that. We're going to promote the snot out of it. And we're going to do well winning, bringing jobs of the 21st century to our community and throughout Mississippi.
That's fantastic to hear. I would love to continue this conversation, but I promised the next panel that I'd keep everyone on time. And unfortunately, we are at time. So thank you, Danielle, Janita, and Clayton for joining us for this panel today. Be well, be safe, and happy holidays to you guys.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks all. All right, let's go ahead and transition into our next panel discussion on small business and digital commerce and the workforce in Mississippi. Very happy to welcome in our next group of panelists, Mary Martha Henson from the Jackson County Economic Development Foundation, Laura Hipp from the Mississippi Development Authority, and Sheffy Robinson, the founder and CEO of Shamrock. Welcome all. Great to have you here with us today. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Would love Mary Martha to go ahead and kick us off and just tell us a little bit about your organization and what the last nearly 2 years have been like for you and the organization.
Sure. So thank you, Rob, and what a privilege to join my colleagues from across the state of Mississippi, and of course, Senator DeLano, who's also from here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. You know, it's interesting that you asked this question. Let me give you a little bit of understanding of who Jackson County, Mississippi is first. Jackson County, Mississippi is the most industrialized county in the state of Mississippi. We have a number of defense contractors, petrochemical, aerospace companies here in this community. So we've had quite a bit of success over the last couple of years. We've announced about 3,000 new jobs and $600+ million of new capital investment. But why do I say that? Because this conversation is about technology. And I think sometimes when we talk about manufacturing, we lose sight of technology. And so we focus on the manufacturing aspect. But what's so interesting about having the largest industrialized county and how it intersects with technology is you think about, let's just take a defense contractor here in Jackson County, Mississippi. I'm going to talk about Northrop Grumman for just a moment. I mean, what they're doing in aerospace, unmanned, whether it's the aerospace flight systems or what Ingalls Shipbuilding or Halta Marine are doing in the unmanned maritime systems. I mean, right here in Mississippi, we have an intersection of technology and manufacturing. So, you know, that's what we spend a lot of our time here in Jackson County, is making sure we're preparing for the future of that technology.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary Martha. Laura, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the Mississippi Development Authority and, you know, talk a little bit about what MDA is doing to build the Mississippi economy back up?
Right. The Mississippi Development Authority is the state's economic development and tourism arm. We kind of had two sides there. We work with everyone from small businesses to large corporations that are creating jobs in Mississippi. And then, of course, highlight all our great attractions there are to go see around the state. The last 18 months, on the economic development side, our project managers really didn't slow down. That was kind of interesting to watch. Companies were still prospecting and looking for new sites because they knew it. I think they know at some point this will pass and they will still have to carry on with their plans. And I think some of that has even increased with the supply chain challenges we're seeing now in the country. So, that was good for us. We've learned to be flexible in the past 18 months. We've of course, like everyone else, gone more virtual. One program we have helps Mississippi businesses export goods around the world. We couldn't go anywhere. We started relying on virtual shows. I think that is something that will last. We'll still make those visits around the world, but that will be kind of a nice, affordable way for some of those companies to reach new audiences and new customers that we can still incorporate. And of course, site selectors started looking at sites virtually as well. And I think that's something that also will be cost effective as they whittle down where they're going to locate. That is fortunate for us. I think we have some good sites and keeps us in the mix as we, move forward in the process.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Laura. Last but not least, Sheffy Robinson, great to see you again. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Tell us a little bit about Shamrock and how you got started with it, and briefly, go over what the last year and a half has been like for you and for Shamrock.
Absolutely. So it's Shamrock. We are a artificial intelligence workforce development training platform for the K-12 space. And that we first help students find their ideal career. And then we try to connect them with local resources to get them job experience in those careers so that we can work to decrease brain drain and increase talent retention for a community success model. So that's the basis of what we do as an organization, as a company. I was fortunate over the last 18 months to already be on the virtual train, as I am a military spouse, and that is what brought me to Mississippi. So that anytime you run a business as a spouse, you kind of have to be nimble and ready to move. So we were kind of ahead of the game, and we were able to make some strategic transitions in that when we came to the state, we were just a software development firm building websites and software for large companies. And I just really got to look at the landscape of what was happening, because I'm from Georgia. what was happening back home in Georgia, and then what was happening right in front of me as we were navigating the pandemic. And I looked at, here I am, a seasoned technologist with over 20 years of experience as an engineer, and I have an AI basis. How can I use the knowledge that I have to improve the area around me? How can we get kids more prepared? Everybody always complains about an entry-level job requiring 3 years of experience, but it's usually because a lot of the job training is missing in schools. And it's not anything that the schools are necessarily doing wrong, so much as we just have to think a little bit farther ahead to be prepared and be nimble as a society, as an economy, because the jobs that are here today, some of them may not be here tomorrow. And what my 7-year-old will go into in the next decade, may not even exist today. And it's just always a process of looking at how technology can help us look at the past, navigate what we have currently, and look forward to the future. So that's what we've been hard at work doing at Shamrock with our artificial intelligent machine learning models, to make sure we're constantly looking at where the workforce is going and how we can prepare the next generation workforce so that nobody is left lagging. And as a country, we have to just be more nimble in reaching for those goals a lot faster. And I enjoy that Mississippi is definitely on the pathway to doing that, probably a lot faster than a lot larger states. And I appreciate, as a parent, as a person of a military family, that the state is dedicated to their people in that way.
Well said, Sheffy. Thank you so much. Question I want to ask you, you are a pretty digitally savvy entrepreneur. I'm curious to know, what new digital tools have you started using that you didn't use before the pandemic that you'll most likely continue to use going forward post COVID-19?
Sure. The way in that we connected virtually is quite different. Even though we were a virtual company previous to the pandemic, we still were kind of loosely, I don't think we communicated that well at all. But with that becoming kind of a standard, it just had me to look at the pitfalls that we had in communication as an organization, how we can be more effective in transferring information. So we had to enlist project management tools that track goals, that track our different digital assets via it. It could be, our advertising spend, how we're engaging with customers, our marketing funnels. We weren't tracking any of that previous, but because it became necessary in order for us to continue to do business, it helped us to be much more methodical in how we addressed different things across the business. So definitely a project management tool that allowed us to track goals was pivotal. Refining how we engaged in as far as meetings, like we used to have a ton of meetings. But then during a pandemic, that got to be overwhelming. So how can we be more effective with the meetings that we did have? Video versus non-video, things of that nature, having check-ins versus having a meeting for everything. All of those pieces were, some of it was technology driven for an actual specific piece of technology. Others of it was process and procedure and how we interacted to make sure we were still being effective in how we communicated. And literally every time my internet connection would go out, it would be like a travesty because I was that, you have to be that engaged. So, definitely project management was probably one of the bigger ones, and better ways to use video connectivity tools.
Fantastic. Out of curiosity, which project management tool do you use for your company?
We use Asana.
Same here.
Yeah, great tool. Nice. Love it to pieces.
Great tool indeed. Mary Martha, I'm curious to know, how have you seen the community in Jackson County come together to support small businesses and entrepreneurs?
Sure. So again, when you have the type manufacturing companies that we have here, we also have the suppliers. And if you look at the classification, that would be more of a small business. It's interesting when you, going back to what Sheffy was talking about, in this workforce issue, what we see here in Jackson County and what we've done really during the COVID, the height of COVID, was to figure out how we're going to reach our future workforce, to make sure that they understand the type jobs that are here today, because these are high paying, high skilled jobs. And so what we've done is really, we put technology in the schools, and we've put apps in the schools. We've introduced workforce videos into the school systems that are embedded in the app. So all of our students in the 7th through 12th grade in the Jackson County Public Schools now have access to the jobs that are here in the community. And so what that does is that ties those small businesses, the larger employers, into the school system to make sure that we continue to have a pipeline of workforce.
Very nice. Thank you. I love that. I love hearing things like that. You know, education, as we mentioned in the first panel, is key to a lot of success. And the barrier, it seems like, is getting higher and higher, unfortunately, for many small businesses to try and figure out digital tools and skills. And that gap that we've seen through the research is kind of growing in a K shape, and the K is just getting wider and wider. And so we as an organization are trying to figure out a way to bridge that gap and try and get other educational services and skills out there through SBA and SBDC and SCORE, as Janita mentioned, to businesses that really could use them. You know, it's very intimidating to a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses using digital tools. And if we can lower that barrier for education and inspire more people to learn about the benefits and take the time to learn, you know, how they could impact their business and utilize them to grow and find success, I think the better off we would be as an economy in the country. Laura, curious to know, you know, how have you seen in Mississippi the way of encouraging a new generation of entrepreneurs in the tech space? You know, how is that looking in Mississippi right now as we go through the recovery process?
I think Mississippi has had successful tech companies here in our college towns, around Stennis Space Center on the coast, around the Army's supercomputer over in Vicksburg at the Engineering and Research and Development Center. But it's all maybe been a little disjointed. What we've started here at MDA is working more closely with our university research or research universities and trying to improve that ecosystem. You know, one challenge we have in Mississippi is we have angel investors. We don't have venture capital, a strong environment of that. So we are looking at ways we can improve that to support entrepreneurs and grow that knowledge-based economy here in Mississippi, because that's key to, you know, growing so many of our towns and, you know, keeping young professionals here in the state.
Very nice. We've only got a few minutes left here, and I just want to go around the room and just get everyone's thoughts. You know, what's your vision for the future of your business and other small businesses that, as it relates to the workforce and the growth in the online economy? Sheffy, what do you think? What's your vision for the future?
So our vision for the future is to become so data-driven in what we're doing for workforce development that a municipality, a small town, will be able to come onto our platform and pull up a real-time feasibility study of what their workforce looks like. That will give them an opportunity to then easily go and bid on, you know, contracts with companies to come into the area, workforce development dollars from the USDA, all of these types of things that empower communities. At the end of the day, we have lots of resources available, but a lot of times people just don't know those resources are available. Even myself moving to the Vicksburg area, I, you know, had to Google everything to really figure out, you know, what was happening in certain areas. And then a lot of businesses were not there, so I didn't have to drive around. But you have a lot of, there's a lot of opportunity there to bolster the businesses that are here, connect them with the students around them, and empower those students to say, hey, you don't have to run off to the big city to have the career of your dreams. You can build it right here in your hometown with your grandparents so they keep your kids. So it's all about, for us, making sure we're very intentional in what the scope of workforce looks like, whether whether a student is going off to college as their next step after high school, whether they're starting their own business, going into the military, or going right into the workforce. We want to be able to support them in that goal, because all of these facets bring a return on investment for everyone involved, from the city they come from to their family, socioeconomically, social impact in general. And that's the goal for our platform, is to be so succinct in the information that we're gathering and providing to students, as well as those that are impacted by the students, that a business can literally walk into the place, know exactly the lay of the land, and the municipalities that support those businesses can be able to thrive.
That's fantastic. Sheffy, what's the website? Where can people find more information out about Shamrock?
Sure, it is shamrock.com. No O in Shamrock, though.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Laura, what about you? What's your vision for the future as it relates to business and the workforce and growth in the online economy in Mississippi?
We're really examining where our workforce needs are in the industry sectors we serve, and where those sectors are going, getting our workforce prepared for that. One example is, say, cybersecurity. We have some of our universities, say Mississippi State University is a leader in cybersecurity programs. We have coding academy here. We need to get our students kind of beyond learn the basic coding, but let's get them into some career paths that are kind of burgeoning. That's an area that's not going to go away anytime soon, and probably only going to get worse. So that's kind of one example. Another example, we have a large automotive sector here, companies of all sizes. They're going to electric vehicles and building batteries. And I think, we have a great opportunity to improve our workforce in that direction too, and get there's a little higher skilled jobs than maybe what you use building a car today on the line. So that's really where we're trying to turn our workforce to.
Fantastic. Mary Martha, I'll go ahead and give you the final word here.
Sure. So, it's we have three goals here when it comes to technology. First is making sure that as a community, we're doing everything that we can to capitalize on the technology that our industry develops and uses. So that would be the first goal. Secondly, is that we are doing everything we can on a workforce and making sure that we have pipeline of talent, and that the technology that's required is in the schools, whether it's broadband, whether it's making sure that students have access and understand the jobs that are here in the community, and that we continue to have that pipeline of workforce, because that is critical to having a strong economy. The third piece of it is something I believe that Clayton in your previous panel mentioned, and that's, what we've learned out of COVID is a lot of people get to choose where they want to live now. And so quality of place becomes top of conversation. And even an economic development organization like ours here in Jackson County, that becomes an issue that we make sure that we're looking at every day, having multi-use and mixed-use development, making sure that we have good restaurants and good in museums and things that attract that talent pipeline to your community and give them a reason to stay here.
I love it. Very well said. All right. I think we are at time. So thank you all for your time and sharing your expertise and your experience with us. Really, really appreciate it. I know our audience really appreciates it too. Good luck and be safe. And with that, I want to say a big thank you to Senator DeLano for taking the time to join us today. Really great keynote speech from him. And thank you to all the panelists for joining us today. This webcast will be available on the 3C YouTube page following this event. So for those of you who are interested in watching this again or potentially sharing it with others, feel free to check that out on our YouTube page. And as I mentioned before, for more information on the Connected Commerce Council, be sure to visit our website. It's connectedcouncil.org. And with that, everybody, please be safe, be well, and happy holidays. Thanks all.